This is the third time I'm talking about embodied attention in ensemble dancing, and with I generally focus on ensemble improvisational dancing. However, it not only these practices serve any ensemble dancing, because they are orienting toward they are attentional practices that we start to understand become spatial practices we can live. So I'm very interested in how dance becomes living. And since I am always interested in being a singularity that is also always a multiplicity, in other words, I'm always more than one. I'm entangled in my environments. That means that on some level, I can move and attend and be present as an ensemble at any old time. So the dance continues from the dance floor always into the world. And that I find important and interesting, and thus the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, which is a research program, a research network of dance ensembles that we are rebuilding right now. At the end of this program, maybe Leanne, you and I will talk about that and about what's happening in Europe with respect to the ISSC. So in the last two talks, I've spent a good deal of time talking about skills, attentional skills, time skills, touch skills, and the touch in particular that is attentional. When we touch something right now, you're all probably touching something, at least the floor. And very often that touch goes completely subconscious so that it's not active in your attention. It doesn't need to be active in your attention, but if you chose to make it active in your attention, it's immediately present to you. And likely when you do that, you move, just micro movements. Because the way we outwardly move our perceptions, and this we turn to J.J. Gibson, looking at his understanding of visual acuity and the visual practices. He spoke about how we see, and then we look at him not in minded practices, but inactive practices. Sorry, I was getting the one word and in minded, which is a word I very frequently use, and the inactive people don't. So I have to be clear. But inactive practices, which I've also spoken about in one of the Breaking Breads, I believe it was probably October, I spoke about inaction. And inactive practices, which speak about how the eyes move around a subject in order to bring its three-dimensionality to us, its notion of what it is, of how its bring it present to us, and the sense that presence is motion. I speak about presence as a disturbance, which is also to speak about presence as motion. presence is a disturbance because, in a sense, everything is moving. We live in a moving environment. For human beings, there is no stillness. There is never stillness. You know, our heartbeat, there is never stillness. If you go down into the deepest, darkest cave, you will find you are hearing, feeling your heart move within you. And even though that has become subconscious right now, just like your relationship to the earth or the chair or whatever you're touching, nevertheless, it is being noted, because if anything changed, you'd be alerted. So you'd become alert. I said, it's interesting, you'd be alerted by yourself. The you that is in motion would alert you. It's fascinating and wonderful to think, therefore, that stillness for a human being, and for what we know of physics, stillness is only a concept that none of us actually get. I'm going to give you a moment to think that through, because it's important to recognize where concepts, and concepts, when I say a concept, I really mean the imagination. The imagination that has an idea and formulates that idea in relations to what we do. And it's kind of marvelous. Where you are, I'd like you to feel stillness right now. Where you are, imagine you are still, and be as still as you can. And then, upon that stillness, move. Keeping in mind a concept of stillness. Keep sensing stillness. And because you're moving a hand, or you're moving your head, or you're moving your eyes, and you are putting stillness, you're putting your movement against a canvas of stillness. You're holding two concepts in the same moment. You're holding experience against a concept. Does that make sense? To heighten sensation, if you back it with a notion of not being against not being, the way a painter paints on a canvas, it heightens sensation, and you go, oh, that's what I'm doing. There it is. This which both is present because I'm doing it, and I'm doing it against a canvas of not. And immediately you start to understand the art of your actions. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it's provocative, because because when we understand that stillness itself is something we manifest conceptually. I look at a piece of furniture, a chest, and it's not moving. In my experience, it's not moving. So I understand stillness, certainly. It conceptually lives around me, even though I know it's that we all are in motion. But to know that chest, I have to move around it with my eyes, with my touch. I feel it penetrating space. So there's spatial concepts that are similar to a canvas that might help you experience space and tactile space, and to experience that tactile space, moving touch around an object that is itself not in motion, but you are. So in touch, in visual terms, we think, in movement terms, we go to stillness. In visual terms, we might go to a white canvas. In auditory terms, we might go to silence. So in order to hear sound, if you listen to the silence that allows sound to be heard, you will be able to hear sound more acutely. So that's what I'm saying about stillness. If you can understand stillness, you will feel motion more acutely. Okay. Now on to ensemble dancing. And how any of this matters. So we have a number of people in a space, and the space is vibrant with action, even if people are only standing. Because, of course, in order to stand, you're going to be in motion. Balance is motion. Contact improv teaches us that. And so, but so does dancing, if you pay attention, any motion, any movement. We can also describe it as falling. So the motion of falling into stillness is an idea of balance, which doesn't really exist because it's a very difficult place to find. You only find it as you pass through it, but you don't find it and get to hold it absolutely. If you're on your feet, if you're laying down, there's it's not nearly as acute. It's not the same thing. And yet, in dancing in ensemble, one of the things we can do is hold the space, the whole space, as a canvas. And if your canvas has a lot of colors, because everybody's moving, so everybody's doing something on the space, everybody is a paintbrush making color, you're going to have a very difficult time understanding all of what is happening in one moment. But if you also hold a canvas of stillness within the whole of the space with all of the people, a canvas that is constantly renewing, now you've got a platform on which to understand the instant now and to experience the relations that are taking place in that instant now. I know I'm supposed to just keep talking, but I'd love you to tell me if this is making sense to you, or if this is just too conceptual, too much mind for you. Are you understanding? It becomes a visceral experience. Just as motion is a visceral experience, stillness can be a visceral experience, the absence of motion.
Nita, I'm understanding up until this last little concept you brought up about if everyone's moving in the space, there's so many colors, it's hard to.
Okay, so
And
in my imagination, everybody is a paintbrush on a canvas. And if my canvas is full of color, it's very difficult to see my own singular mark. It gets lost, or anybody's singular mark. It gets lost. But if that mark is constantly on a canvas of a white canvas, not a busy canvas, but a white canvas, I'm going to see the mark. I'm going to feel the mark. I'm going to know where it's deep and where it trails. Right? So when I'm working with a group of people, I always have a conceptual white canvas that renews constantly. That's one of the skills that helps what that person is doing over there become highlighted for me. And now I can see my relationship to that which is happening over there visually. If I'm doing that on the tactile level, tactily, it'll become available to me. Now, I'm very interested in the tactile level of things. A lot of dance improvisation is done as a visual art. So I want to mention that to you. I want to keep that present for you, because if it is done for an audience, it's a visual art. It's manifest physically, right? But the end result is a visual art. We might, not that it's solely a visual art. It has other elements, right? Excuse me. But, okay, I'm going to see if, no, still not ready. Sorry, I sometimes get something in my throat. So, as dancers, when I do ISSC research, I relieve my dancers of the visual art because it's very difficult to attend to somatic communication if you're concerned about what it looks like. Then your somatic communication is on the realm of the visual relations, but they're not on the level of the somatic relations in the same sense. And when I say somatic here, I really mean touch. But if I take those somatic skills and I then apply them to a visual art, now I've got another level on which to manifest. So a lot of dancers actually are trained visually. They're not trained somatically. To be trained somatically means you have to be inside that beautiful experience of being present. You have to feel the disturbance you are in a space, which is, again, why you want to have always understand where your canvas is. It's a touch canvas, which means for me, if we're dealing on the level of presence, you have to deal on the level of not being. How is the space different if you're not there? And then, but you are there. So the you that is not there and the you that is there are co-current. You're bringing them to this present moment now. So the fact that my hand goes up becomes profound because it is being. It is present. This is not about sadness. This is not about death. I'm not talking about that on that level. I'm really talking on the level where you feel, because you are, that that hand is changing the whole space of the room. Because a room that doesn't have that hand rising is a different room. The room that has this hand rising is significant. The room that has me looking visually at a dancing partner, I can even feel against that canvas of being, of not being. I can even feel how the space itself is changed. The fascia of the room becomes visible, and how I move and change, and how my partners move and change the fascia of the room. So what do I mean by the fascia of the room? And I'm just, right now, I am traveling around for you to understand and so that so that I'm awakening the mind that is emotion. That dance is not just going mindless and feeling. It can be that, and that can be fun at a discotheque. But if you're seriously studying what dance can be, then you've got to activate this other aspect of being that you are, which is the mind. As it is a body, the mind is a body. It's not separate from the body. If you're alive, it's functioning as body. And how I imagine has everything to do with what my mind can do as a body, as it moves in the room. So the mind that is a fascial body of touch can move through a room and hold a whole room in one moment. Why? Because I'm alert. I have such heightened tactile availability. A canvas of not being makes being very vital. Right? Yeah. And when and this is a very high level of work. Really high level of dance work. Okay. of somatic work. There was something else I wanted to lead you. Oh, I'm reading this wonderful book, Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. And he's talking about fungus, and how fungi make our worlds change, our minds, and shape our futures. So this fungus, I was particularly taken. I mean, it does amazing things. one of the things, as you probably know, is that trees, or not trees, vegetation, made it onto land from the seas, made it onto land only with the help of fungi, because the fungi became the root, acted as roots for plants for a long time. And they still become the mycelium that is between plants, the kind of network of communication that acts between plants. It's fascinating. It's amazing. So one of the things I love that he says is that, and I wanted to bring this to you today, in speaking about the mycelium, he says, mycelium describes the most common of fungal habits. It's a habit. It's not a thing. Better thought of not as a thing, but as a process. So the network of touch that is between me and my dancing partners is a habit I build. I work it in order to be able to be in touch with them. And the mycelium that I speak of, that is constantly in motion, forming relations of interbeing. I'm moving slowly here so that, because I'm bringing up a lot of words, the mycelium that I use as in order to form these networks of relations, spatial relations of touch, are attentional. They are the interruption of space because of being. They're tactile. They can be felt. They are, I have called them an attentional fascia that we form. They concentrate. If you bring your hands together and you ask one hand to notice the other hand, come together, bring these two, feeling reaching outwardly. There is this outward reach. You will feel space concentrate. And my language, not science, my conceptual language for that is attentional fascia. And I sense that concentration. And because I sense that concentration, now I can start to sense it in the world. Can I sense it with a non-human object? That becomes interesting. It's a different kind of concentration, but absolutely. If I ask it to, it does. So anyway, I'm not sure how far into this. I think I'm way into this. And I think I should probably stop. I've just put out a whole bunch of ideas. I haven't gone very deeply into ideas of interbeing. I haven't gone into ideas that I've talked about in other Breaking Breads about the multiplicity I also am. But that mycelium allows me to be this larger being, which is the whole space of the ensemble. And when I'm the space of the whole ensemble, I'm in an interbeing, extended understanding of Nita that is, and that is also inviting myself to be co-presenced by other people, by other dancers, be where I am as well. That sounds like a huge amount of complexity. But what makes it very simple is that canvas. The canvas just makes everything very simple. One of the difficulties we have as dancers is to, and especially as contact dancers, is to reduce the visual dominance and amplify our tactile skills, our ability to feel within ourselves, as you might with body mind centering, and the ability to feel what's happening between and within our relations. The space of being, the entangled space of being, and how that comes about. That's where I'm very interested in studying. That excites me. And to do that work, I have to work against culture, and culture wants something visual. But I also love a visual dance. I love to do it. It's fun. Super fun.
Yeah.
So figuring out how, if I'm amplifying somatic communication and I'm saying this present moment and this present moment and this present moment and this present moment, I also need to have a memory if I'm doing performance, because memory is going to help me to shape the space of time. Now, I haven't talked to you yet about shaping the space of time. That's a whole other skill. So the skills of attention are huge. The attention that notices where does this ensemble begin? And in this moment, where's this moment within the shape of that whole dance?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making the dance happen? Or am I unfolding and allowing this dance to emerge? Well, hopefully those questions have been answered when you scored the piece in the first place. Because the score has to answer how the dance comes about. And you can score for emergence. And you can score for organizing.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of different kinds of scores. And we kind of deal with that in composing emergence. But for audiences and for performing, you absolutely need to be able to have an attention that will oscillate between this present moment and my somatic relations and the piece that is coming about. I have this horrible memory of a moment of somebody asking me, a studio was closing and they were asking me to do, to bring my dance research. It was at that time called, I think it was called Divisadero Dance Research. The studio was on Divisadero Street. We were a San Francisco-based company. I was getting a PhD. No, I wasn't. I was past my PhD. I was freshly back in San Francisco and just working with this company that I had worked with while getting my PhD. And there were some fabulous dancers in it. Kathleen Hermsdorf was still alive and dancing, and dancing in the company, danced with us. But and then there were other people who were doing dance performance, dance pieces. And I said, okay, and let the person who opened whose studio it was, who also danced with with the company, introduce us. And she did not say what really absolutely needed to be said, which is, this is not a visual art dance we're doing. We're not doing a performance piece. We're doing somatic research. And it was an awful performance. It was just, people were not working with those skills that we would have worked were we doing performance. Were we a performance company? So maybe an important thing to do would be to talk about performance one of these times. What do you think? Yes? It's so important to recognize your influence in the space of being. If you're living in an entangled world, how are you influencing that world? If you're on a dance floor and in an ensemble and you are entangled with them, what are you bringing in this moment? What does the lifting of that arm, can you feel the shift of the whole space because of that? So you have to allow yourself to be a larger being. You have to conceive of the human differently. Because even the thing about doing a visual art is that it's sight has this aspect of separating things out. To train people to look with the eyes of love that don't create that separation, that takes training. That takes work. I have to be in a studio and show you how to do that. Because the other eyes create distance. They go, oh, this is that far, I'm this far from that. Right? I am not that. In previous Breaking Breads, we've talked about prepositions and how they define relations for us. And mostly they define relations of separation, not concurrence.
Yeah.
So I think choosing who I am, how I conceive the human is really important. And dancing gives me the opportunity to be doing that thing, which is and against culture, my cultural training, and offers this other possibility for what a human can do and be. So where does it come from? Where does that action, why is it generated? How does it arise? Is that the question?
I feel like I'm still even feeling for the question.
Okay.
But I feel like you're answering something. When you're speaking to that training to have eyes of love and to see how we're much larger than we think we are.
Yeah.
Having this extended self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots here. It's so deep. It just won't stop for me. I mean, I'm kind of on this thing that just keeps unfolding. And part of the reason why it unfolds is because, one, I can enter the experience of it. It's not just a conceptual idea. And I say just a conceptual idea, even at the same time that I know those conceptual ideas are so important. The way we understand a human is a conceptual idea that we live.
Mm.
So I am actively changing the way I understand the human so that I conceptually live differently.
Mm. I'm sort of having a sense of your inviting, because you said you have to go into the studio to teach that, like, or inviting our bodies into that experience. And
That's what I do.
yeah,
That's why I
yeah.
travel around all the time, is because I'm really interested in getting in the studio, because in the studio, I can make these things more real.
Mm.
I think one of the things that's most important to teach right now is to give people permission to hold a larger space of being, because we have been socialized to be very, the size of our skin. And the second you allow yourself to socialize larger, now you have the possibility of maybe finding that it's okay for you to enter someone else's physical form as a spatial being, to be where you are and where they are at the same time. And that is a acknowledgement of difference, a recognition that I am composed of difference. I am not composed of sameness. And that composition of difference that I am extends outwardly. And I only become stronger, in better communication, better states and levels of entanglement, more conscious, aware states of entanglement, when I let myself be larger. Nobody gets served by me being small, except somebody that really doesn't want me to be here, or wants me to only be doing something very particular. Someone who wants to see me as an object. I'm not an object. I'm a being.
I love that you just emphasize the difference within ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about, I think teaching kids to change. I mean, I flex all the time. I have to be small sometimes. If I run around the world being large, that's what I was saying to Tanya. When I run around the world being large, it's not a world that can handle that right now. I can sneak it into it. It's in gradations. But I have to show up as normative a lot. But I like being non-normative. And being on the dance floor is definitely non-normative. Don't try and be normal and dance. Just don't try it.
I have another question.
Yeah.
How do you approach having that you called it facial attention with an audience, or
really different ways, really in different ways. Like I do not, I prefer to not dance as a star. So outwardly this way. But I do like to dance. So I'm large, right? But I do like to invite audiences in. Enter me is really, if I were to put it into words, I'd say, come enter move this way. And I'll go out and meet them where they can be and draw as well as I can. And in that sense, I've always used this term, I'm kind of performing as a black hole. In that, if I have a certain degree of attentional gravity, meaning everything that happens within the presence of this being is heightened. I recognize it. And in my relations, if I'm in a contact dance, in my relations with my partner, if those relations have a certain level of gravity to me, they have draw. They have attentional draw. So I have to draw the audience. This is where I got this training from, doing contact in performance, early years. I would draw, drawing the audience through my physical form to be able to feel where the point of contact was and to be there. In that point of exchange between me and my partner's body. I used to conceive of it as a whole that would open up between us. So I do think attention, I think of attention as a force. And by the way, everyone wants your attention. They want that force. It's on the marketplace, that force. They buy it, they sell it. So we need to be really skillful with our attention. So clearly I conceive of a world in which people have a lot greater skill with their attention. They're not losing it. We're in a kind of crisis right now of attention, especially spatial attention and relational attention. We're in a crisis of it. But not absolutely. There's always us.
I hope that you all will feel like you can keep the conversation going. You can reach out to Nita or learn more about the offerings that she has by visiting her website, which is nitalittle.com. This has been Breaking Bread, a digital series offered for free every month. And we'll be back next month with a new topic, and we hope that you'll come back too. And once again, for more information on what the topic will be, other upcoming events, you can head over to the website, or you can just stay on this Zoom for a moment. We're happy to also talk in person. Thank you all for being here.